As Dr. Anderson said, I'm Jennifer Moore. I'm one of the assistant principals at Liberty Bell. I'm happy to be here this morning. I want to talk to you about something that is new in theory to us with the trauma-informed practices, but I also want to say that this has been a long time in the making. Before Ms. Pierce left, and this is Dr. Morgan's first year of being with us, we were already transitioning to this. We just didn't know the name of it quite yet. We saw that there were needs that our students had that needed to be addressed, and it really got us as an admin team thinking about shifting how we do things discipline-wise, and that's kind of where this started. We looked at positive behavior. We went to several conferences that talked about positive behavior, instruction, incentives, those kinds of things. We had an ACEs study. One of our in-services was on paper tigers. If you're not familiar with that, please look it up. So that's kind of been the background that's led to the trauma-informed practices that we are now looking at. Back in the summer, there was an opportunity for several schools across the state, any school could apply for a grant. This was through the Tennessee Department of Education, and Liberty Bell was one of 70 schools that was chosen. And there were over 200 schools that had applied to participate in this grant. From there, a leadership team was formed, a trauma-informed leadership team, and I'm on the team. There are 2 teachers that are on the team and one of our school counselors. So there are 4 of us all together. We went to Knoxville several months ago for our first training. It was a 6-hour training. It was more than that. It was actually a couple of days. But in theory, we can retrain teachers, and it's a 6-hour in-service. We actually had our first annual Tri-Cities Regional Health Summit, ACEs Trauma-Informed Care. Some of you may have been there on January 7th at Liberty Bell. So that was our first rollout of Trauma-Informed. Ballad Health, they actually sponsored us in that endeavor. We had a great turnout and felt like it was very successful. Moving forward, the goal of our team is to continue training the teachers at our school and teachers from other schools in using Building Strong Brains curriculum. The trauma-informed approach will be instrumental to the development of our school-wide discipline plan, which is something we are working on as a group this year at Liberty Bell. So what is trauma? It's important to understand what exactly trauma is to know what we're doing as a trauma-informed team. So trauma, one definition of trauma that is in our Building Strong Brains curriculum states that it's an experience or perception of an event that leaves one feeling, keyword feeling, hopeless, helpless, or powerless. For most, trauma isn't a one-time occurrence, and sadly for our students, it's not a one-time occurrence. Many have been impacted by trauma. They've experienced it over years and years, toxic environments, toxic stress. They're living in it every day. They're essentially in survival mode. Their brains are wired for fear. They have survival brains. That is how they enter our classrooms every day. So why consider the trauma-informed approaches? There's a direct link between childhood trauma and illnesses. So it's not just a matter of what's happening right now, but moving forward, how is this going to impact them as young adults into adulthood? Chronic diseases, mental illness, doing time in prison, work issues, absenteeism. Jane Ellen Stevens also stated that more adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, there are 10, result in a higher risk of medical, mental, and social problems as an adult. So the problems that our students are facing right now are going to follow them, and how do we as educators help? In implementing a trauma-informed model, some of the goals that we as a school are really working hard on is, first of all, shifting the mindset and looking at our traditional ways of doing things since way back when, and how is that working for us right now. if I'm being honest, it's not working too well. We've got to shift gears. We've got bigger problems. We've got to rethink the way we're doing things. And we have to remember we're doing what's best by students. So the traditional fear-based, if you don't do this, you're going to be sent to the principal's office. To a more relationship-based kind of culture. Relationships are so important. I feel like I can't stress that enough. If you don't have a relationship with your students, then you might as well not even be teaching every day. They're not going to listen. You have to have the relationship first. Teachers and staff must be mindful in how they think, act, and respond to students. So the trauma-informed approach, it isn't just about the students, but it's about the adults and the shift in the adults' thinking. Students must feel like the adults actually care. The success of a trauma-informed culture requires all adults to be consistent in all interactions with all students, from bus drivers, custodians, or cafeteria staff. All of the adults that are working with their students should have this training. It's very important. There's a common language, and having that consistency is very powerful. Lastly, remembering that it is the brain that is driving the behavior. This is a brain issue. It is not a behavioral issue. It starts with the brain and what's happened with the brain and the trauma that the children have experienced. I want to take a minute to show, it's a short video, it's about 3 minutes. Just to give a little perspective, this is a student's perspective. Some of you may have seen this before.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
The laptop.
Do you think that makes
This
us
screen.
I forgot my number.
What's your name?
Jordan?
What's your last name?
Carter? School is hard enough.
Come on in, sit down quietly at your desk, and begin writing.
This kind of stuff just makes it harder.
I said quietly, please. Who's talking? Is it you, Sophie? Don't let me hear.
Don't believe me? Please just watch.
I'm not up here for me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention. Okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, the teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Severity. Your student's behavior yesterday in the lunchroom was terrible. Next time, silent lunch. Did you hear that? Stay in line and catch a ball. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble. Bye, Miss McGarrity. Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing? Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead, punch your number in.
Talk with us, not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right.
Teach us what we need to know. That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand.
She is prayed for evil, so she comes at night.
And that will take us places we could never reach without it.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions. If you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
We would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be. Why would you want to silence us?
So some of you may have looked at this video in the first half and thought, oh, I've maybe been that teacher before. We are not perfect, and I think the key thing to remember in shifting our thinking is that when you know better, you do better. And so the first step for us as a school at Liberty Bell is education. And the little bit of time that I've had just this school year to dive into the trauma-informed approach has been quite eye-opening. I feel like it's a new passion of mine. It makes so much sense, and there are so many layers and so much that I could share. 5 to 7 minutes makes it a little difficult, so I'm just giving you some of the highlights of the start of what we are doing here. Couple of things, because I know I'm about out of time. I wanted to share this, especially if you have a minute. I highly recommend you watching this. It's about 15 minutes. Talks about ACEs. It's a good summary of trauma and ACEs. Nadine Burks-Harris, she's on TED Talks. I did make copies of the PowerPoint just in case anyone would want to pick it up on your way out. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer. I'll do my best to answer. Again, we're still in the early stages of this, but I know that it's going to be very impactful for our students, powerful. It's important. It's very important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For providing us with an overview that actually had a lot of specifics. So you packed a lot in.
Yes.
Before we move on to our next presentation, we have maybe time for just a quick question.
Okay.
So is there anybody out there thinking, I'd like to ask for this, ready to raise my hand?
I did that well. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
But this is an ongoing process.
It is ongoing.
It's not something that just happens.
Correct.
You have to, we're going to be doing this at our schools for many years.
Correct. And as a team, we meet regularly. We will go through another round of training over the summer. We will constantly evolve and grow in this. And the community outreach, too. I feel like our community is getting on board. There's a lot of stakeholders that are interested in what we're doing. So we're excited to be going down this road, and I really think that it will be powerful. Thank you.